Hi, it's Lee Chamberlain. I'm back again. Remember we were talking about the bug eye? Bug eyes were, the first ones were actually built in the 1840s. And you could still find them on water around 1904. There was actually one that had been restored and was kept as a museum piece until 1953. And it actually floated. It was actually a working, floating model. Now, what's important about a bug eye? One, it was a fishing craft. Two, it was powered by sail. Now, significance of a bug eye, hey, it's a fishing boat. Okay? It's a big deal. Well, back in 1861 through 1865, there was a blockade of most southern states that ranged as far north as the Potomac River in the Chesapeake Bay, all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. Now, bug eyes are indigenous to the Chesapeake Bay. They're the forerunners to another fishing boat called a dead rise. The role the bug eye played in the American Civil War, guess what? Where you had fast, elite sloops all the way into France, all the way down into Louisiana, the bug eyes were blockade runners. Now, why would it be important to look for a fishing boat that was possibly used as a blockade runner? Well, back in the day, in the early 1800s, there was an embargo against slaves. As well, there was an embargo during the American Civil War about the importation of certain materials of war. So, if you have a boat like that, it's fast, it's sleek, presents a low profile, and can outrun usually a very larger boat. The other aspect of this boat was that it figures into the history of watermen. Virginia has a proud tradition in the Chesapeake Bay of Chesapeake Bay watermen, of which one of my ancestors was one of them, so I'm very proud of that. And a lot of people say that I'm a spitting image, but we won't get into that. I'm a diver. Now, researching the bug eye, I have to keep looking at this stopwatch, so I'm not praying that I don't trip over my own 2 feet, which I have been known to do. But the history of the bug eye, why it would be important, the search for it. So, first of all, remember in the previous section, I said EEIs, essential elements of information. You go to the area, you research the wrecks that were found. In addition to that, you research the type of boats that were used. The important thing to understand is the architecture. And yes, that's what it's called, even in nautical terms. Now, some bug eyes were a mainsail and a mizzenmast. Now there's a term I just threw out that most people don't understand. If you see a boat, a sailboat, it has 2 masts, the tall one in the front and the short one in the back. The short one is called the mizzen. So, 4. How do we find this boat? Now, remember what I said about archival information and essential elements of information? Well, one of the resources I looked up on was a local historian. Now, not the kind you're going to find working in the public library, not the kind that you're going to find working in a reference section anywhere. He was a waterman. He was raised on the water. He knew about the wreck. He had heard stories about it. In fact, he told me quite a few stories that were rather interesting. But the important thing is he knew all about this boat because one of his ancestors had died on it. Now, one of his ancestors had died on it. So did that mean that the boat caught on fire and sank? Was it sunk? Was it sabotage? An interesting mystery. So, the first step to this was to go and find out about something that Virginia's not really very proud of. Well, I don't think anybody would be. Is a thing called the Oyster Wars. The Oyster Wars ran on the Chesapeake Bay from 1859 to 1959. 100 years. 100 years people shot and killed each other over oysters. So now this bug eye is getting to be really interesting. So, with that, we set up a search plan. Search plan from the informant had said, if you go to this section of the road, and there's this oak tree, and if you swim out 100 yards, that's 300 feet, there's the bug eye. Well, you swim out this, but you have to remember, here again, what I said in the previous video. Weather, tides, currents, sedimentation. Ooh, there's a new one, right? Remember I said a geological process. So what happens in this area when this boat was purportedly lost in the late 1800s? That means all of these, especially this one, hurricanes came into play. Now, remember I said the local historian said swim out 100 yards? Well, I swam out 100 yards. And then I swam out 125 yards. Guess what wasn't there? Remember what I said? X never marks the spot. Consider X as a minus. So with that, we decided to set up a thing called side scan sonar. Now I have 1 minute and 30 seconds to explain this. You start off with a point of beginning. You take your sonar, you run it, and it shoots on both sides of the line all the way down. You make a turn, you come back, it's doing the same thing. Make a turn, come back, it's doing the same thing. Now we've got a general area to work in. So, we keep doing this until finally we get a hit. Now, we turn the boat, go back to the point of beginning, and start doing it this way. In other words, we're gridding out the area, and now we're finding out that this area here, this debris field, actually we went out another leg, this debris field is over 100 feet long. And it's not 100 yards out, it's not 150 yards out, it's 60 yards out. 60 yards. So with that, in the next video, I'm going to explain to you how shipwreck research ties in to finding a lost boat. I just basically gave you some hints with the archival information and with the side scan sonar. Now, the next step is we're going to talk about the diving. Have a good one. Be right back.